and welcome back, or welcome if you're new. If you're new here, my name is Elena. I'm the homeschooling mama to 3 kiddos, and here on the channel we talk about everything from homeschooling to homemaking, all the things in between. As you can see from the title, I'm going to wrap up my May books with you. I was trying to make sure that was the right month. So far, I have read 9 books this month. Every month I think I'm going to start slowing down, and then when I get to the end of the month and I see what I read, I'm like, wow, that was a decent amount for me. Let's go through and talk about some of the books that I read this month. I'm also going to share with you what I ended up reading for the Southern Charm Readathon. So I will kind of put that in the books as well. I try to film as I finish a book, but I don't think I got to do that too often this month. But I know for sure I have at least one clip, so let's jump there. Okay, it is still morning-ish. In fact, I haven't even finished my first cup of coffee, but I just finished reading The Bound Bookshop of Maggie Banks by Shauna Robinson. This was such a cute read, and I wanted to kind of wrap up and tell you about it. I have been sick for the last couple of days and have been not able to do very much at all. So I did do some reading. I did start another book. I'll tell you about that in a second, but I ended up picking this one up in the middle of the other book I was reading. I'm sure you can hear my kiddos. They're awake, but not quite down the stairs yet. The book follows Maggie Banks, who at the beginning of the story is not a book lover at all. She is just kind of floating around, not sure what she wants to do with life. She's had a lot of jobs, but her best friend is going on maternity leave and asks her to watch over the family bookshop. And in there, Maggie finds not only an appreciation, maybe a love for books, but for the town that her best friend is living in, and just more about herself. And then, of course, there's also a romance in the background that is really sweet and enduring. It's not, I wouldn't say that the romance is the forefront of it. It is a closed door book. There is one part in here that it doesn't allude, because it right out says that they have relations with each other, but it doesn't give too many like steamy details. So there's that. But I finished it because I was not well and I had all this time to rest. I finished it in a day and a half, I think. So great book. There is an excerpt, a preview to the next book at the end of this book, and I think I'd want to pick that up as well. But I think I'm probably going to rate it 4.5, maybe even 5 stars, probably 5 stars. I really like this book, but I wanted to hurry and capture my thoughts on it right away before I forgot. So if you haven't read this sweet, endearing book, if you like books, this it all takes place surrounding a bookshop, and it's about banned books, and also a little bit of a family mystery history in there. So excellent as well. Okay, I, again, am getting ready to return a book to the library. I'm going to go run a couple errands, and I finished this pretty quickly, Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I probably did that not 100%, but I read this book. I know this was a really popular book a few years, months, I'm not sure, when it first came out. Super popular book, and I think there's like a whole little series that goes with it, because my library ended up having like a couple of these little books right all next to each other, which is why I noticed it. It's a cute tiny little book. It is only 272 pages, and like I said, I read it fairly quickly. But if you've not heard of this book, it is about a coffee shop. My family's here, so I'm sure you can hear them in the background. But it's about a coffee shop where if you sit in this certain seat and you drink this special coffee, you can go back in time, and you can visit anybody that has been in that coffee shop. But the catch is you can only visit for as long as the coffee stays warm. If the coffee gets cold, then there's repercussions, and the book talks about that, I think, in the first story. So there are 4 different stories, I believe. Yep, 4 stories in here, 4 mini stories about people who go back in time or go to a different place in time. The last story kind of sums that one up. I liked this book, but I found my part skimming over parts of it, and I don't know if it was just me and it's just like not the typical book that I would pick up. The first and last stories are the ones that I found most pulled at my heartstrings the most, but all in all, it was a pretty decent read. I can see why there was such a big draw to it, because it's a really cool idea, and I think the other books kind of follow up in that too, in telling different stories and variations of people, their stories when they sit in this chair, and who they visit and why they visit and what their purpose is. But for me, it was a good book. But I don't think I'm going to pick up the other ones in the series just yet. But I'm a very much mood reader, and that's just kind of not where my mood is right now. The book, though, that I am thoroughly enjoying, also from the library, I picked it up on the Southern Charm Readathon. I'll link that in case I haven't yet. But Stay With Me by Becky Wade. This is a Misty River romance. And this is a library book, but you can see that I stuck some Post-its in here because I was making notes, and I started reading this book, loved it so much. I'm like on 135. I think I'm a little bit further than that, but which is about right here. But as you can see, my bookmark fell out. But that's okay. I put a pause in this book because I went ahead and purchased it online because I was like wanting to annotate it so bad. So I put a pause in it, and I purchased a used book, I think from ThriftBooks. It's one of my favorite places to shop for used books. I have a referral link down below. I don't, this is not a sponsored video, but I buy a lot of used books because we're living that budget life here. But anyways, this story, I'm only so many pages in, and I'm already falling in love with it. And like I said, I find myself wanting to annotate and write in here. And so I purchased my own copy so I could do that, but I put a pause in it until my own copy comes. I think it's going to come in a couple of days, but I'm getting antsy because I want to continue on with the story. So this one is going well. In the meanwhile, I picked up this book and finished it, but I also picked up a digital read, So We Meet Again by Suzanne Park. It tells me I'm about 32% of the book in. I will tell you that this book, there's already cuss words and a damn it in there, and so I know that is off-putting for a lot of people. So I don't know that I'm going to be able to finish the book. We'll see where it leads. I don't know if it's like a closed door, open door book. I've not been reading a lot of open door books, and so yeah. But that's what I've picked up right now. Like I said, I've got an appointment that I've got to go sit for a little bit. And so I'm going to just read a little bit further into that digital read. And then if we finish it, I'll let you know. And if not, I'll let you know. Okay, and some of these books I can't remember if I told you about, so I'm going to try to wrap up as soon or as quickly as we can. One of the books that I read on digital read was called Love Decoded, and it was by Jennifer Yen. It is described as for fans of Jenny Han and Jane Austen, a rom-com that's equal parts hilarious and heartfelt. And I think it was a really cute, light read. This book loosely follows two school rivals, but mostly I think that the romance is kind of in the background. It is takes place in high school, and Gigi Wang strives to be the best, the top student, the perfect friend and ideal daughter. But she's got all this on her plate, and she really enjoys creating apps and being in that world. And so she is in a school that they have classes for this kind of thing, and her and this other student are usually right up on top. This is not the romance portion. There's a big contest that happens for the creating the best app, and Gigi really wants to be picked for this. I'm trying to remember correctly because I read this at the beginning of the month. This book, I do remember it was a good lighthearted read. She makes some poor decisions, and then we kind of see her realizing what her poor decisions, the effect they had on people and the effect they had on her, and is this the kind of person she really wants to be. So all in all, like I said, thought it was a good, cute, lighthearted read, which is a lot of what I read. Next up was So We Meet Again by Suzanne Park. This one follows investment banker Jessie Kim, and she has a career shift, a dramatic career shift in her life. She's actually let go of in the beginning of the book, and she is not quite sure what her next move is going to be. So she has to move back in with her parents and figure out what she wants to do next. In doing so, she kind of reboots this old YouTube channel that she has, and it's a cooking kind of hack channel that she had when she was in college, and business ensues from there, and it kind of follows her along in there. While she has moved back in home with her parents to her hometown, her high school rival has also come back to visit. He and her were constantly pitted against one another to see who was getting better grades, who was doing more, who was, you know, things that parents will sometimes, I think that they don't always realize, and sometimes they just can't help themselves, right? Where they're like, oh, my son is this and my daughter is that, and yeah, so they're in the midst of this. So growing up, Jessica always felt like he was her rival, and she could never compare to all these things that he was doing. And so here they are, both adults, both are staying with their parents right now. He is visiting, but he's on sabbatical, and Jessica is back because she's been laid off. A relationship that happens there, and we see what happens. It's really cute. I probably said cute way too many times in this video, but it was adorable, and the way that Jessica's business takes off is really fast, and it can seem kind of maybe not fully relatable, but it is a work of fiction, and it could happen. All in all, I enjoyed reading it. I've been reading a lot, like I said, of lighthearted reads, just to kind of escape. And so this book was definitely one of those. I also get to touch on the relationship between Jessica and her mom. That happens a little bit more towards the end, but all in all, great read too. More digital reads was an Amish Cookie Club Courtship. I did read another one of these from the series. This is by Sarah Price, and I just wanted to finish the series before I wasn't able to. I have, if you saw in the community tab, I have a library card that is expiring, and I'm not able to renew it because I'm no longer in that state. And so the current place that we're at doesn't have this book available, and it was just the last one in the series, so I needed to read it. This Amish Cookie Club series follows a group of women, a group of Amish women who get together weekly, and they bake cookies together for their fellowship and for their church districts. They have gotten the term the Amish Cookie Club by their husbands and people that know them, people in the community. It's not really what they've called themselves, but that's what other people have called them. This group has children, and we kind of follow along the romances of the children and how the Cookie Club may or may not be helping along these romances. So in this one, we get to finally meet the daughters, the twin daughters of one of the Cookie Club members. These twin daughters, I think in all the books, they have been offering their assistance. The mom has been trying to get them out of the house and offering their assistance, but nobody wants to hire them because they are known to quarrel with one another and just like disagree on everything, and it just makes very difficult working environment. But finally, one of the women who serves lunch to the Englishers in the area, she just desperately needs help, and she is out of people who are available. So she must go ahead and accept the offer of the twins to come and help her out. The woman that is serving lunch to the Englishers, she has two sons of her own. She has more, but I think the other one is married. She has two sons of her own, and so it's kind of this back and forth to see if the boys will match up with the girls and which boy will match up with which girl. And for a while in the book, you're not quite sure. It goes back and forth, and you're not quite sure who to root for or what if it's gonna work out. So this book was cute. I'm glad that I finished the series, and if you like Amish reads, I think that you would enjoy this series as well. And then a digital read that I picked up just out of well, not out of nowhere, but kind of randomly, it just showed up on my screen. I think it was a recommended read or something like that, was Famous for Living, and that is by Melissa Ferguson. This book was so endearing. I really liked this book. I didn't think I was going to, but and I'm not sure why. I think because I just picked it up on a whim. But I did give this book 5 stars. This book follows Kat Cranwell. She is Insta famous. So she lives in New York and she has been famous, Instagram famous. She's kind of a influencer. I almost lost the word. And it just talks about her lavish lifestyle that she is leading and like capturing all these pictures, and then scandal kind of hits. It doesn't kind of, it does hit. So she decides to go back and live with her uncle for a little while, and he of course lives in this very secluded place, and one of the men that he works with is just very not anti social media, but maybe can be seen that way. He uses a flip phone. He doesn't really appreciate, he doesn't see the worth, I think, a lot of in it. And so her Kat and him kind of butt heads, and their worlds don't really match up. But of course there's a lot to be learned about why he feels the way he feels and how Kat became this insta famous influencer. And we get to dive deeper into both of their stories in here, and the surrounding characters, the uncle, the rest of the crew. You just kind of can't help but fall in love with all of them in this book. All in all, I really, really loved it. If you're looking for something about social media and to learn a little bit, I would definitely pick this one up. I think too, in all the books, I know on the digital read, at least 2, it had like a quiz you could take to see if maybe you were addicted to your phone or addicted to social media, and then it had discussion questions as well that were kind of cool to look at. Okay, the next book that I picked up was Arsenic and Adobo. This is by Mia P. Manansala. I'm not sure, again, if I said that right. I picked this up. It's not my typical read. This is what's considered a cozy mystery, but I picked it up for the Southern Charm Readathon, and I read this like in 2 days because I just had to find out who did it, how it was done, what the heck was happening. This book was super, I don't know, cute is definitely not the word for this one, although the antics and the family dynamics were really great in here. This is follows Leela, or Lila as she will sometimes pronounce or introduce herself as. She moves back home to recover from a horrible breakup, and she's going to help her Tita Rosie and the family's failing restaurant. So her Tita Rosie has raised her because her parents, I believe her parents have passed away, and so she is like her mom. And while in the restaurant, she moves back home and decides to help her in the restaurant. And while there, her ex-boyfriend is eating in the restaurant and dies. And it isn't funny, but it just seems that wherever this girl goes, something is happening. And as we dive in deeper, more people are dying, and not in a gruesome way. It doesn't really like describe it in great detail, which is, I guess, what makes it a cozy mystery. But it just seems at one point the officer that's investigating is like, wherever you go, like that's where the trouble is. And she's like, yeah, I know, but not on purpose. And so she and her friend decide to embark on an adventure and figure out who did it. So they first want to find out who killed her ex-boyfriend. And as more people, as more things are happening, it's not looking very good for her. She has her Tita Rosie, like I said, who owns the restaurant, and she's older, and they have their like crew of Titas that help them and family, and it explores the family dynamic, both the where we haven't talked in forever and we have these mixed feelings, but we're family and we're gonna pull through anyways. And so it was just a good read. I don't normally, like I said, read this kind of genre, but I really liked it. I may consider picking up another one because she has, I don't know if it would be considered a sequel or like a series. I'm not sure how many books there are, but the next one is Homicide and Hollow Hollow. One of the cool things I thought about the book too was that they have recipes in the back of it. So, because this book talks about food, and apparently really like books that make me hungry. So it's got recipes included as well if you wanted to try out making some of the food that's described in here. Speaking of food and books, love a la mode. I think I had originally picked this up because there was a sweet treat or something like that. I'll put the exact thing up for you, but again, for the readathon, I don't remember offhand if that's the one that I ended up using, but this was Love a la Mode by Stephanie Kate Strohm. This is an endearing story. This follows two young kids. They are traveling because they have earned a very private spot in Paris, I believe. Yes. So a prestigious school in Paris that is run by a very famous chef. And so the girl dabbles, or doesn't dabble, she is in love with baking and bakery and the art of it. And this young man that she meets on the plane ride over is also happens to be going to the same school, and he loves to cook. And so they both have earned a spot at this school over the summer. I don't know if it's over the year or over summer. I think it's over the year, not the summer, but Rosie is the young girl and Henry is the young man. And they are both school age kids, and they get to, like I said, get to go to this prestigious school. Henry's parents really want him to do well in other areas as well, not just cooking. Henry's mother mostly, she can appreciate cooking, but his family owns a restaurant. His dad is a chef, and Henry's mom kind of runs the background of it, the accounting and things like that. And so she just feels like it's very, very difficult work, and she's not sure that she really wants that for her son. So she pushes him to pursue his other academics. Meanwhile, Rosie is just in awe that she's been accepted to this school and having trouble figuring out if she really belongs there, because the majority of the program is about cooking, and that's not where her specialty is. So along the way, we get to meet some of the other students that are accepted and the kind of things that they're going through, friendships that are forming. Of course, Rosie and Henry have a romantic interest. It is a closed-door book because it is, I believe it is a YA book. It is just a really, again, food, romance, YA, right up my alley. Pretty good book. Another book that I read was The Bookseller's Promise by Beth Wiseman. I am finding that I really enjoy Beth Wiseman's books. I ended up reading one last month. I think it was like one of my NetGalley reads that I was able to read, and it ended up being like the last book in this series. And so I didn't realize that it was a series book. You could read it on your own. The same for this one, I feel like, but the characters do cross over. So with each book, you're learning more about those particular characters, but you could read it as a standalone book. But I do think you would get more from the story, like most series books that run like that, if you read them all. And this one follows Yvonne, Jake, and Eva. Jake owns a bookstore. He is Amish, so in his Amish community, he runs a bookstore that was left to him by his grandpa. And there is this very precious book that his grandpa has left to him and told him to never sell it. Yvonne is a book, what does she call herself? I can't remember what she calls herself, but basically she searches out rare books and convinces people to sell them. And doesn't that sound like a dreamy job? So she gets to go around and try to see if she can find the rare books that her clients are asking for, and then kind of broker the deal of selling the book if they're interested. So this book, Yvonne has found only one copy of, and it is the book that Jake's grandpa has left him, and she goes into town to convince him to sell it to her client. Jake does not want to sell. She offers a huge amount of money, and the store is in need of repairs, but he still won't sell, all based on the promise that he's made his grandpa. He has actually never read the book though, and the young girl that works in the store with him, Eva, she has worked there with him since she was a young girl, and now since turned into a woman, and is attracted to Jake. But Jake is having trouble deciding if he really has feelings for her in that way, or if he can only see her as this younger version of her. And so as we go on, we learn more about each of these characters. There are some very heartbreaking moments in here, but also just some kind healing moments almost. We get to see the beginning of a salvation story, and it's just such a great way to kick off the series. So if you're interested, if you like Amish reads, I would definitely suggest this series, but maybe go in order and read this one first. I am currently reading the last one in the series. Well, it wouldn't be the last one. I'm reading the middle one because I already read the last one. So I'm reading the middle one now. And then lastly so far is Queen Bee by Amalie Howard. This one, as you can see, was a new title at our library. One of the libraries that we visited has like all these newer titles out on a specific shelf, and I just happened to be walking by, and I always try to glance at it and looked interesting, so I picked it up. I do pick a lot of books based off their cover, for whatever that means. So I picked this one up, and this one was also a book that I ended up reading in just a few days. The back just says, my younger self, the gullible green Lady Ela, wouldn't have had a beggar's hope of taking on the filthy rich and lofty Tun, or Poppy Landers. Hence my elaborate and entirely Machiavellian plot for revenge. There was room for only one queen, and that would be me. And this book was just, it takes you on an adventure. You go back and forth from, it is the same girl, her point of view, but Lady Ela is who she grew up being. That was her given name, and there is a scandal, and she ends up getting the boot from her town and kind of just shunned. And so she's growing up and kind of transforms herself into someone else. And so we go back and forth between two time periods for the majority of the book, and back and forth between the name she now goes by, which is Lyra. And so we go back and forth between Lyra's point of view and Lady Ela's point of view and piece the story together like that. Poppy Landers used to be Lady Ela's best friend, but does some horrendous things, and Lady Ela is bent on, well, not Lady Ela anymore. Lyra is bent on having her revenge. And so she goes back finds her way back into aristocrats. And I don't even know I'm sure there's a word for it, but the highfalutin people. She finds her way back into that crowd, and she's gonna get her revenge, but heartstrings are pulling for her old love, and she's just, her conscience is digging at her whether or not she should actually do this. Just a good book. So much stuff in here, so many like little twists and turns, but not too many that you get lost and feel like I don't know what's going on anymore. I think I give this book 5 stars. I really liked it. I may look for other books by this author. Okay, I finished up one more book to wrap up May. I did end up finishing the Amish Bookstore series, book number 2. I read these out of order, but like I said, you really could read them out of order and still have the story make sense. The second book was called The Story of Love, and it followed Yvonne and Abraham's love story, or the beginning of what would be their love story. Yvonne is the woman from the previous book. In this story, Yvonne comes back to visit and is taking over the bookstore for a short while. She comes to help out, and we get to learn a little bit more about her and her spiritual journey. This book, because I think we also learn more about Abraham. Abraham is someone who grew up in the Amish faith, but has not been baptized into the faith, and so he set off and became a police officer. I will give you warnings for this book. There is domestic abuse that is in the storyline, and kind of a few serious topics, I think, because Abraham and his role as being a police officer. So be aware of that. But all in all, this book fit in nicely with the series, and I'm sure I mentioned, I'm really enjoying Beth Wiseman and her books, and so I thought this was a great read, and I'm glad that I picked it up to finish off the series. So that would be the 10th book that I read for the month of May, and I only have like a few more days left in May, but I don't think I'm gonna get another book finished. I say that, but yeah, I'm pretty sure. Anyways, that's my May wrap up. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. If you have any book recommendations for me, let me know down below. Or if you've read any of the books I've talked about or any piqued your interest, also let me know. Thanks so much for hanging out with me. And of course, as always, if you don't know or just need to be reminded, please know that you are deeply and truly loved and so appreciated. I really appreciate you taking your time out and spending it here with me.